we have to have meat.
Yeah.
Let's get more people.
Hello, I'm Ed Bennett.
And I'm Eric Echolm. A report about people in caribou in northwest Alaska when Alaska Review continues. The western Arctic caribou herd was once the largest of 13 herds in Alaska. In 5 years, it plummeted from 250,000 animals to 50,000. This is a story about caribou, but mostly it's about people. Caribou, or tuktu as they are called by the Inupiat Eskimos, are a member of the deer family. They are a migratory animal that ranges across the vast tundra regions of the northern portion of our continent, sometimes in herds up to 500,000 animals. The western Arctic caribou herd was once the largest in Alaska. They range in the northwest corner of the state, from Barrow in the North Slope down to the Seward Peninsula, in an area of 140,000 square miles, or roughly the size of the state of Montana. In 1971, there were an estimated 242,000 caribou in the herd. Today, there are about 50,000 left, according to the Department of Fish and Game. Some 10,000 people in scattered villages in northwest Alaska depend heavily on caribou. It's their primary source of meat and provides skins for mukluks, blankets, and to some, their only source of income, masks crafted from caribou skins. The annual human take for the past 10 years has been about 30,000 caribou, or about 3 caribou for every person in the region. This year, in emergency regulations, the Board of Game imposed a 3,000 caribou limit, bulls only, and allocated those animals strictly to people living within the game management region, allotted on a basis of need. What happened? No one is really sure, except that humans have had a lot to do with it. So in a period of 5 years, the western Arctic herd catapulted from the largest herd in Alaska to the brink of extinction. Alaska Review asked the people responsible for management of the herd, the Department of Fish and Game, how this disaster could have happened without anyone noticing. Bob Hinman, Deputy Director of the Division of Game.
It's like a lot of other things. If you had the past to live over again, you do things differently. At the time we took the census in 1970, the herd was thriving, was very large, and we assumed that matter of fact, we assumed that the kill would decline from what it had been because of the advent of snow machines and the lack of dogs to be fed caribou and so on. And so we were not really concerned with the herd as it was then. What we didn't anticipate was that the kill would continue to be very high, and matter of fact, perhaps increase. And it's a remote part of the state. We had problems elsewhere. We simply did not feel at the time that we could justify spending the time and money up there compared to other areas of the state.
Jim Davis is the regional caribou biologist for Fish and Game in Fairbanks. He was in charge of the recent census.
Statewide, there has been a shortage of money and manpower just because of the rapid growth that Alaska has experienced in this decade, and primarily since the discovery of the oil on the North Slope. I don't think that lack of personnel or operating funds to properly monitor this population was unique. I think that there are parallels throughout the state. It's just a painful period we're going through in Alaska. I believe we're going from a period when extensive type management was sufficient to a period when very intensive management is mandated now, and we're just realizing those growing pains.
The growing pains of the department and the resultant misattention to the western Arctic herd may or may not have headed off this situation. Although it seems obvious that the two major predators, man and wolf, are factors in the herd's decline, no one is really sure exactly what happened. Dr. David Klein, biologist at the University of Alaska.
Well, unfortunately, we don't know, and I don't think anyone does. There's several factors that can be implicated, but which ones are the primary causes is hard to say. Certainly, during the peak of the population, when there were estimated to be about 240,000, there were some indications of overpopulation, such as a high incidence of disease in the population, brucellosis. More recently, the heavy harvest by subsistence users has been a factor in the continued decline, but it's hard to say that that's the cause of the decline. In fact, it's very doubtful that was the cause of the decline.
The estimated kill yearly of wolves and man is 45,000 caribou. This alone could account for the shrinking herd. A wolf control program is now underway in the wintering area of the herd that hopes to wipe out 80% of the wolves in the area. Wolf control in Alaska is being attacked by environmental groups nationwide, but in this case, even most environmental groups are supporting the program. Dr. Sam Harbo, Professor of Wildlife and Fisheries and Chairman of the State Board of Game.
Oh, the wolf control would be restricted just to the wintering range and could not exceed 80% of the wolf population there. We wanted to ensure that we did have a viable wolf population remaining. The point is, though, that we felt it imperative that we reduce the wolf predation on the wintering herd because data indicates that predation is much more severe during the winter than it is on the summer range.
Most villagers support a strong wolf control program, although they would prefer to be allowed to hunt the animals themselves, as wolf pelts are very valuable. But they generally see wolves as competitors for a dwindling food supply.
I would think every wolf should be exterminated. I mean, in this region, if a choice between wolves and caribou, see, wolves will get real high. They'll be, one time I counted 140 in one pack with an airplane flying last winter. So they've each got to have at least, some meat every day or every other day, and that meat now is needed by the people here.
Man is the main predator, and man may be the hardest to control. People in this region are used to unlimited access to the herd. In fact, Fish and Game encouraged liberal caribou take in the early 70s because they felt the herd could sustain it. One of the most sensitive issues is that of waste. Fish and Game in testimony before a legislative committee estimated that 20 to 30% of caribou taken in recent years might have been wasted.
In the Cayena Hills, we made a rather intensive survey last spring and discovered, I can't quote the figures right now, but it was in the hundreds of animals left on the tundra where they had been shot and no attempt had been made to salvage them. The same thing has occurred in other parts of the Arctic as well. And why? Why? It's a good question. I suppose part of it is that we have provided people in that area with the means to take more animals than they used to be able to. We have provided technology that enables them to get out further, to hunt much further from the village, with more mobility, more firepower. We have provided the means whereby it's possible for people to take more animals over a wider area. Perhaps we have not, in the same time, provided the ethic that promotes the conservation of animals, the need for conserving them.
John Schaefer, President of Nano Regional Corporation.
I don't want to hide it. There has been waste, and fortunately it hasn't been everybody, but we've had a percentage of people who have wasted caribou, and part of it is a part of trying to accept the regulatory system that's been imposed on us, and not self-control as we've done in the past. And of course, when Fish and Game did not regulate, excessive use of wanton waste occurred.
I think there's probably a lot of waste, but there's nothing, in this case, there's hardly anything that can be done about it because as it is now, Fish and Game is understaffed and they're not doing a very good job at all.
Do you think they're going to be able to enforce this 3,000 animal limit?
No, I don't think so. I think it's probably already been surpassed. People when they're hungry, they go out hunting.
The problem of enforcement is compounded by a communications problem. People we talked to in coastal villages and Anaktuvik Pass all said the same thing. They think there are more caribou than Fish and Game counted.
I think there's more than what they think they are, because I don't think they really did a good count on.
How come?
I know there's so many mountains, I don't think they can, the caribou shouldn't they, traveling, when they're not traveling, they scatter out, and I don't think they could get an actual count because they can't fly through every valley.
They can't count all the caribou because a lot of times caribou go into the timber and willows, and they can't see the caribou.
One reason that some people are seeing more caribou is that last year the caribou migrated much closer to the coast, and the main portion of the herd came near villages that hadn't seen that concentration before. But for whatever reasons, people just don't want to accept the census figures of Fish and Game. We asked Jim Davis why.
Most people may have very intensive knowledge about a relatively small area around their community or village, and they are quite knowledgeable, more so than any of us in the department would be about any specific local area, but they just don't have the opportunity to see what's going on over the herd's range, which amounts to some 140,000 square miles, or roughly equivalent to the size of the state of Montana. And so it's virtually impossible for any individual to have a good broad overview of an area that size. Most people, I think, equate our involvement with the population as just conducting what is known as an aerial photo census, which is the best means presently available for trying to determine total numbers. But in addition to that, we do many other surveys throughout the period of the year.
Regardless of who's to blame for the decline, the fact is, whether by regulation of the Board of Game or demise of the herd, the people of Northwest Alaska are in for some tough winters. The actions of the board in allocating caribou were unique. They generally followed the recommendations of the Nenana Regional Corporation. Caribou permits were given only to people living within the game management unit. Villages were allotted caribou permits based on the dependence of that village on caribou, and permits were given out by village councils. There's going to be 1 million pounds less meat in villages this winter, and this could drastically affect the people's subsistence way of life.
We have to have meat.
Yeah.
Let's do more people.
Subsistence is a method of survival to us. It's the way the people have lived off of the land and its resources, land and waters, for centuries. It's part of our culture. Everything we do, the way we think, is based on it. This is why I can say that, you know, if we don't have this caribou herd for 5 or maybe even 10 years at the rate we need it, that we'll get by, because this is how we've lived in the past. Whatever nature provides or doesn't provide, we adjust to the situation. It isn't going to change our culture. We just won't be able to hunt caribou as much, and maybe other things too.
Caribou is more than just protein to the people of Noorvik, Alaska. It's the mainstay of their diet, and it's also used for their shoes, for their food, for dog food. This year there's not many caribou left, according to Fish and Game. And the people are forced to turn to other methods and other traditional foods in order to survive.
Oh, we'll have to eat little fish, what we get. But if they're gone, I don't know what we'll eat. We've been snaring this fall ever since when it's almost time to freeze up, and we're doing still snaring, my husband and I. My husband isn't too well to go alone. Sometimes he almost had a stroke, and I have to go with him. I'm 63, but I'm snaring. First time for a long time when I was a child, I used to go snaring, but I was worried about having no food for the winter. That's why we try to gather something little for the winter. I can't go without meat. That's why I'm snaring. I can't eat fish every day. I'm not used to eating fish every day. It's the first time we're not having caribou for meat this time. That's why we're real busy while the rabbits are here, and while the fish are to fish, we're trying to fish to get for the winter. It's gone. Gone? Maybe the dog or... Yeah, the whole thing is gone. Oh, right there. It's dead. You took it down from that one over there. Dead. Dead or alive? Alive. Achkag. We have to hold it in the head like this Stephen showed me. Look, right here, the snare. And we have to go like this because it will scratch us with their legs. Pull the heart down. Where is it? Did I get it? Yeah. You know, summertime long ago, Stephen's dad used to go hunt caribou walking out to the mountains because they want to have meat for the summer. They can't eat fish all the time, as Eskimos can't eat fish all the time. They put it in the raft when they go way up to Salmon River or to those rivers. They come down with raft with meat, and that was a good days. We have to eat meat when somebody come home. We can't go without meat around here. I can't. People can't go without meat. Just like you like beef and chicken and turkey, it's our food, the only food we'll have. We don't buy much chicken because we can't afford. We don't buy turkey so often. We can't afford. We got no money. We have to use for something else that will, like flour and sugar and milk. That's why we need caribou. Wee rabbit. Hey. I don't like to lay on the ground. That's why I hang on the willows. Hey, that's a duck.
While Mildred and Steve return home with meat for their dinner, other families in Norvik are also forced to find alternate foods to take the place of caribou. Skeeter Malloy joined Alaska Review in sharing such a meal with the Moses and Hazel Snyder family.
These smelly fish are hot. Frozen.
Tastes just good, man. Better than a T-bone steak.
Mm-hmm. Was just seal oil in?
Mm-hmm.
This is seal oil.
This is what it looks like. Put down there.
There's no seal oil up here. Only thing we have to buy seal oil from Kotzebue. Only way we can get.
Take a piece of that.
Where's that smelly fish? Right here. That's the kind.
What did you call these?
Masu.
Where do they come from? You say that's...
Mouse is put away for winter.
Then you go into the mouse holes?
We dig them. We dig them and take them home for winter food.
This is celic, dried celic.
It's good.
This is whitefish. This is how we cut them in the fall time. We want smelly suvac too, eggs.
That's like caviar.
What's whitefish, Dad?
They're smelly.
What's whitefish?
This is how we we have a lot of dogs to feed too. A lot of them. How many dogs we have? Over 15?
13.
13? Eskimo spinach, this is kawak.
How do you get that?
We have to look for this kawak in the summertime when they grow. And we have to store away for winter use.
That's our dessert.
They're really expensive winter time.
Anaktuvik Pass is one of the hardest hit villages, as they depend almost entirely on caribou. This year, however, villagers say they are seeing more caribou, possibly from the healthy porcupine caribou herd to the east, not the western Arctic. Mayor Mark Morey. How long have people, the Eskimo people of Anaktuvik, relied on caribou for food?
Well, before we settled here, we used to follow them around, kill some here, and when we run out, go south or go where the caribous are. Just follow him around. And there's some hard times, but we usually live through it because there's caribou. There used to be caribou around, and it's the main diet of the people because we got no other source like other villages, such as fish and sea mammals. And we got nothing else to turn to if we can't get the caribou.
You think there's still enough caribou?
Yeah, the way it looks, I think this fall there's quite a bit, and there's still some around. I think there's some over east of here. That's the first time they ever come from over that way. And before the pipeline was built, we used to get 2 herds, I think one from north and one from east. And ever since that pipeline was built, we haven't got any caribou from east. What they call a porcupine herd, I guess. And that's, I think they finally crossed it. We finally got some from over that way this fall.
We got nothing last winter. No caribou. Not much caribou last winter. First time we had this fall from north. I mean, in Palatine. 2 years we had no caribou. A lot of people that had no money. Even right now, myself, no money too. I didn't work it.
What are you going to do then? No meat, no money, no caribou.
Oh, no. I'm gonna go hunt caribou.
What's the future? Dr. Sam Harbaugh, chairman of the Board of Game.
I think we're going to continue to see very restricted harvests. If the population decreases again this coming year, the limit may have to be decreased again for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's going to take a while before the population builds back. The point is, I don't think we can let it decrease much below the level it is now and have any hope that we can build the herd back, say, within the next 10 years.
Another important consideration is the protection of the habitat, and there are certain threats to that habitat with expanded oil development on the North Slope, the possibilities of more pipelines and roads.
You see that as a serious threat?
Yes, I think it is. Naval Petroleum Reserve number 4 is an important summering area for the caribou. It includes the calving grounds of this herd, and it includes some of the fall and winter ranges as well. With the native claim settlement, the land is being broken up into varying units with native ownership, state ownership, federal ownership under, say, national parks, wildlife refuges, forests, etc. And it's going to be essential, if this herd is to be managed, that these very land owners work on a cooperative basis to develop management plans which will take into consideration the value of these rangelands.
The situation is critical for the caribou and the people of Northwest Alaska, but there is hope. The calf population is strong. If predation can be controlled, there's a good chance the herd will recover. But there may be some lean winters ahead for the people of Northwest Alaska. The Department of Community and Regional Affairs and other state and federal agencies are standing by in case a critical food shortage develops this winter. Nana Corporation has harvested some of its just-started reindeer herd. People are working to help the people of Northwest Alaska, but it's going to be difficult to help the caribou much until villagers really feel that the mainstay of their diet and the cornerstone of their culture might be lost. Right now, many of them don't believe it. Ed?
A report on the fight over what to do with the Tongass National Forest when Alaska Review continues.